And tell me they don't want me to get the fire trucks all down and around here again, because it would have done.
Susie did say that there's no way that anything will prepare.
Last year was fun. That was
It was mainly just family this time.
I was exaggerating.
no, but we had the fire trucks and.
You know what I mean?
Probably was over the weekend.
That's just it. Like my wife's grandparents lived well into the 90s.
If after you do the discussion on the mural design, if you could then go to six,
You know what I mean.
since we can talk about Old Town projects.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Shall we wait for Jim or go ahead and get it?
That's up to you.
All right. I'd like to call the January 12th meeting of the Bartonville Community Development Corporation meeting to order. First item on the agenda is consider approval of December 8th, 2021 meeting minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, public participation, please. Tim, would you like to step up or? would you- Okay, that'll be fine. All right, so let's go ahead and consider approval of the December 8th meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor? All right, action item or item number 2, discuss on proposed mural design for the Bartonville store. Mr. Hunt.
I apologize. I called this afternoon and you were unavailable at the time, but had I sent you those?
It's in their packet.
Okay. Want to make sure.
I'm gonna bring it on the screen.
Got a good idea what they are. Thank you
I'm
though.
gonna bring it up on the screen.
Okay, our last meeting, at your last meeting, where you allowed a discussion of the whole mural design concept, the impression was that the artist I was working with was a little bit more whimsical than what you guys preferred, and I appreciate that. I was able to work a deal with that artist to pay for some design services, and then I moved on to the artist who
You don't show up, you get the last seat standing.
Right in front for being,
I moved on to the artist who had been recommended, who's done some work in Justin, which is more realistic. So I've been working with him now for the last month. He has submitted 3 designs with the proposed cost for each design. And of the 3, I can tell you, I'm in most favor of the one showing just a single building, the 1940s era building, and have it include the extreme left part. Yes, I think that's the one.
I
Yes.
agree.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Is that this one right
Yes.
That one?
Yeah, I like,
Yes.
that's my favorite.
I agree.
Yeah, this
That's
is the
my
one. And
favorite.
I had not thought originally about including section here, and I think you brought up the point, look there without it. And after seeing his design, I completely agree. That really helps the impression of the overall area. He has, as you can see, it's black and white imaging, but he has snapped out the 7-Up signs with green and the Conoco signs with red, which is basically the colors that they had. And I think this is pretty close to what I'd like to do. I would like to note somewhere the Bartonville store since 1882, because it obviously goes back further than 1943 when this image, we estimate this image was taken. 2 other possible changes I've considered, and I believe Tammy suggested maybe the truck could be a color. I'm good with that. I've talked to the artist. He's good with that if that's the desire. And I'd like to kind of elaborate on the facial imaging of the guy in the picture and turn him into Ronnie Brown.
I didn't even know there was a person in there.
I missed that. too.
It'd be very subtle because it's a small scale, but just, I don't know, I'd kind of like that. And if possible, even I wouldn't mind working something to have 2 people and have James Price in there too. So those are just some minor thoughts, but this is basically what I'm here to propose. I believe the cost that he has on that is 12.5, I think. And I've talked with him. He is willing to negotiate a little bit, especially if I provide him housing while he's doing it, and I can do that. So I guess I'd,
What,
Housing and meals?
Tim, what were you thinking about in terms of the color of the truck?
you know,
'Cause
my truck in
I
high
like-
school was not quite that old, but the old forest green General Motors color is one that strikes home to me. But I'd be willing to go with whatever. The colors we've adopted as the scheme for the store are based on the old sign that basically was blue and orange. And we've used that internally throughout. And there was one of his images that reflected that. It was a little bit too colorful, I thought.
Yeah, both, what's his name? It's
Adam Davenport.
I really like the current one there. I think making that truck too bright would take away from the whole scene.
It's a simpler presentation. The one he has in all colors was based on, it has the three images like I originally wanted. I wanted to kind of portray the history of the store's development. But at this point, I've kind of abandoned that. I agree that a single image would be more effective to say that this place has been here a long time.
I really like it. That's very nice.
That was his.
That's a great idea.
But I can't, Tammy and I kind of came up to it with it together, I think, or maybe I suggested
I think
first.
you suggested it, and it wasn't my suggestion. I had somebody had somebody like that, a color to add, like that one was black and white. There was an example that on one of his others, but that was a staff suggestion that they were, when all the staff members were looking at it.
Y'all may know that Ronnie did a lot with us at the store. He did our parking lot area, and he was always in there eating. And so he was a part of our getting started. We would like to honor him in some way. So that's what I'm suggesting. I know you have a limit on what you can do to participate. Is it 10,000 or is it 9,999 or?
The board does not have a limit, so just depending on what they decide to fund, just depends on when they can fund it.
If it's over 10,000,
If it's over 10,000, then they have to wait 60 days before they can fund the project,
well then
because it has to be noticed in the paper.
what I would
And approved, both projects would still, either way, if it's over 10,000 or under 10,000, still has to be approved by council.
Okay.
If it's over 10,000, the notice, like today was the deadline to get notices into the paper, but probably get a notice in for this Saturday. And then you can't expend any funds until after 60 days after notice in the newspaper for a project.
Recommend if you can, $9,990 or something like that, so that doesn't meet the criteria of having to go wait 60 days. And so
I would like to avoid the extra wait time too and just pay the difference. And $99.99 might be a little contrived, but if
$9 off.
if that's acceptable to you all, that would be what I'd like to suggest.
Sure worked for me. I love that. Too. That's really.
Well, it's obviously good for the store, but I think it's good
It's
for
good for
the
the
town too, to just realize that there's a history to this town. It's not all just new suburban
Most people
development.
don't know that. I've been here 28 years or something. Still don't really understand everything that the Bartonville doing.
And, I'm getting beyond this agenda topic, but between Marty's and what we do and what a couple other restaurants in town do, this is becoming a little bit of a nighttime destination for dinner. Not comparable to Roanoke by any means, but that's how Roanoke started with Babe's Chicken. That's what got people coming there. So anyway, that's my proposal. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to respond.
That just makes that little building disappear there on the end. It's really, that was a very good idea. To have that building.
We did find that there were some older pictures from the front of the store, but a cousin of would be a nephew of Ronnie Brown's, took them and refuses to return them. So we actually tried to obtain to get that information, and apparently that's the history of the front of the building. But I said, I think they've settled on an image and they're happy with it. So I appreciated them doing the research, trying to find it. So.
Everything with James Price.
Yeah, we have some.
Oh, you're talking about that James Price. Yeah, I'll bet he would. Yeah.
James Price Senior, right? That's who you're referring to.
Yep.
Us to add that to next month's agenda.
I think that'd be a great addition to. That's about it.
Just have to make sure it complies with all our lights.
You could put LED lights in it and still it could save it.
Any other questions pertaining to this stuff?
It's just discussion, Tammy.
This one was discussion, and then you do have another item on the agenda to discuss and consider approval of the grant request, which is item 3.
So what amount do we want to do $9,900 or do we want to do $990? Under the 10,000?
Talked about. Now get the lighting.
9,900. So it's
So the-
like,
When you approve this, you can make it a motion to approve the facade grant request from Tim House in an amount not to exceed $9,900.
Make the motion to approve facade improvement grant request from Tim House in the amount not to exceed $9,900. To
Bartonville
your
store.
request. Or the Bartonville store, yes, you're correct.
for the Bartonville store. Great. Item number 4, financial report ending 2021.
If I could, may you go to item number 6, since we have our town engineer here, and then you
Yeah.
can excuse him when he's
Sure.
finished.
Discussion of Old Town maintenance, landscaping and projects.
At the last meeting, you had the discussion for the parking. And Chris has some estimates for you this evening.
And also potentially takeaways I got from that, whether it's go ahead and put some cost of that. And essentially use for maintenance. So for
first page. I'm just gonna walk through this kind of quick, so if you have any questions. First page just kind of show the location of the blue would be parking place version. Yellow on the side would be enough for one spot. If you do think you could do something you want to do. for
Yes.
landscape trailer,
Yeah, okay, you're right, answering my question already.
so that's not for. Trailer, I'd suggest we just not make essentially a little over 40 feet of parallel pavement. When there's tapers on either end of 40.
With that, we get the truck and the landscape trailer off the road.
Parallel parking, it's 20 to get a little road out. So 40 feet ought to be a good sized truck. And then this is kind of zoomed out, but the gray area. There's
it?
a- Next page is a couple of street views of that location, and a little zoomed in, a little more zoomed in version of parallel parking. And the things I wanted to just kind of highlight were there's some rail over, which you can see on the right hand side, just beyond the blue. That's about 8 feet, plenty of room to back something off, trailer, still get between the trailer and whatever the grade is. There's enough room to use it that way. And then, there's still plenty of room between the shoulder of the new parking area to the head wall of the culvert, so you can still landscape, get around through there all right. And I guess if there's any questions on this area, feel free to ask. So it's about 8 feet wide. Just to let you know. So it's extending what is really no shoulder by 8 feet. Next page is really for the sidewalk area. And you can see from that street view on the top photo, it's flat. It is completely flat. What I think is if this is something we'd want to move forward with, you get a couple, 3 people out there and decide, do you want to meander it a little bit? Do you want to come off the other sidewalk stuff? You know, what do you, I'm not really good at visualizing landscape type stuff. So, you know, if there's a wiggly version that would look better and kind of go by the sign better and stuff, then we could do that. What I've basically done is put in quantity to get it away from the street and put a pad up there. So if there's no questions on this page, then we'll kind of go into the next page, which is really, oh. You guys have costs on the last page? Nope.
Oh, we have.
We have a separate sheet.
Okay, mine doesn't have the last page. Sorry about that. Oh, okay, good. Just didn't get stapled in there. Okay.
Let's see the photographs of this. Do you have a spare? All right, thanks.
So the next page that's going to be in everyone's documents then is the observations. And this was more notes that I had just to kind of cover if anyone had any questions. It's really, you know, the fact that there's nothing out there existing sidewalk, the parallel parking spot size, a note about the grading dropping off on the far side of the shoulder. So there's some earthwork built into these costs. And what I also did is I added a 15% contingency into here. We don't have any survey, any hard data for exactly what the shape and how much work would be done in order to build that. So I went ahead and added a 15% contingency just to kind of cover if there's a little more earthwork or grading or something needed. The other thing to point out is this does not include any survey or engineering costs. I think for the pad, for the sidewalk, you wouldn't need any engineering or survey. You could get a contractor to go out there, string it, and install it. Or the one stall version, I think we could get away with it as well because it's compact and we can kind of slide that around the radius if we needed to make the grading look a little better. For the two stall version, we'd like to get some survey out there and make sure the grading and everything will work good against the culvert and the right of way and the rail.
What's the difference? Would that be within the 15% contingency?
I think you could. I think what I would like to look at is getting that survey, which would be about $1,200 to $1,500 to survey both the shoulder. If we're going to go out there and have a survey of the shoulder and kind of that pad area, and then that'll give us a better capability to really massage the construction unit prices. So I think to be conservative, what I would say is if you factored in $3,000 for engineering and survey, I think you're going to be more than enough to both do all that and the construction. Because what I would do on something like this is that the town already has a maintenance contractor. And I've worked with him before on not quite this, but on similar emergency repairs and things like that. And so what I would do is go out there with him, kind of walk through what we want to do, have him put together some costs and some estimates, make sure they align with what I have, and kind of go from there.
Two stall, we talked about that money. That's the sidewalk maybe plus 2,000.
So the 3,000 on top of the two contingencies.
Correct. And I'm just trying to be conservative.
A little less than 25K for two.
Assuming the one parking stall is not. It's kind of not. If we, there's not any redundancy, that's just the one, and then this is the two. And so
They're completely separate. All three items are separate. Okay. And I really put the one parking stall in there just to kind of show you what it looked like. And also if we have a discussion on it to say, my recommendation would be to go to the two.
because the one parking stall won't cover pickup with the trailer.
So someone to pull off, take some photos and then move it on. I think they typically park, my understanding is they'll either park kind of where I have them, or a lot of times they park right on the corner. They just kind of pull off into this area. And park. Which obviously we'd want to get them further from that intersection too.
So if you built today,
Yeah, traffic is picking up quite a bit.
So I guess on the sidewalk, is that something that is a liability? Will it be used? The other question is, so do we want to look at that one, or do we even want to just? Do you guys think the sidewalk is something?
well, the people are using it now. Is that what you said? I think that's what we were doing. I guess I'm comfortable. Put that in there.
Sidewalk piece. Well, the reason that I've got that included was the understanding of, I'm sorry, I forgot what his name was, but he wanted to donate the bench. And so that was the reason for extending the sidewalk and doing the pad.
And I think what I heard, and maybe I'm wrong here, I'm off base, but I thought I heard him say, if we place a pad there, it doesn't have to be anything, fancy, but if we were to allocate a space there to place it, that would be fine. Because I think one of the discussions we had earlier was if we do improve that area, then it becomes a liability for the town. So
Exactly
if
right.
somebody does on that sidewalk, which is an improvement, then it would be on, it could potentially be on the town's
That we're,
terms of liability.
so in general terms, then where were the benches going to be placed?
Middle of that pad that's on the first sheet or the third sheet. So that gray area is basically extending the
It is close to
sidewalk out.
407. Oh, that's interesting because, he was looking at, this entry point here was the area where he thought that would go. And I had thought that it was going to be a little closer to where the horses are. So that bench would be right in front of the horses or close to the horses where you could sit and look at the horses and the lights. If you're doing it at night or whatever.
Yeah, so wanted to, absolutely. And that's kind of why I showed the picture how flat it is.
Uh-huh.
We could put it wherever somebody wants to. There's the capability for grading to just run the walk up, put the pad, as long as we come off the corner point with the signal. As long as we extend one of those walks, we can kind of do whatever we want. up in
Right
that
from the
area.
corner. And
What's
it
the-
still, does it require, is it going to require an additional ADA certification because you're attaching to currently an ADA acceptable intersection? In
We
other
just-
words, it's programmed properly for ADA access.
Yeah, that's the whole purpose of coming off that corner point, is
Right.
that's already ADA. We're just extending an accessible route.
Do you understand the liability issue? I didn't quite understand.
So there's and I can't, the term is something nuisance, like the sign and the horses, it's a legal term, but basically it means it's very inviting for someone to come look.
So we have that already.
Right, but if we put parking there, if you actually striped out parking, all the parking, and then you
But you-
didn't have a
But if you
route-
assume, but if you assume we're not gonna do that,
Correct.
and we just went with the sidewalk extension in the pad, is that? Okay, that doesn't bring a liability issue. Okay, that was my confusion.
We're just doing a shoulder for the maintenance to pull over and back there.
So the liability issue was actually with the parking rather than with the pad and the sidewalk. Okay, all right, got it. Yeah, so there, all right.
We're gonna put parking and leave a non-accessible route to something.
Which we don't intend to do that. So this-
I have a question about financing. So I'm looking at the adopted budget. And current revenue year to date is only 20.
This is a discussion item. If this is something proceed, you'd either have to do a budget amendment or plan for this in next fiscal year budget. Because this is not a budgeted item.
Yeah, but-
Just have to do the funding correctly, but it's not a budgeted item. You'd have to do your budget.
And-
You still have
and-
to get council approval and buy-in on the entire project.
And they're not tied together. You could just do the pad or you could just do the shoulder. I think if you're interested in doing the pad, especially if we're looking at putting it maybe closer to the sign or something like that, then I'd like to redo the sidewalk number. I'll just get out there with the tape and measure how far out we were thinking about moving it and kind of redo that number.
That makes more sense to me. If there's not a liability issue.
Something like the larger shoulder pull off than the shorter one. And if we're gonna be doing that, we might as well do the sidewalk and then pad for the bench.
If you look at it from this perspective, looking at the picture, the one of the horses and the relationship to the sidewalk, if the sidewalk goes straight or follows 407, it's going to be pretty close to the front of the horses.
Go to the first page. Because that perspective kind of does a false angle.
Right?
You can see on that first page, from the turn lane to where the sign is and the horses are, that's about, I think about 60 feet or so. So if we ran parallel to 407, we'd be pretty far away. I think we'd want to do some kind of curve or meander to get it over by the side.
It sure looked a lot nicer. wouldn't it? I mean, but
I think the curve would
Agreed.
This may be a project that you want to look at. And again, I'm still waiting to hear back from some other issues on legal. So we can talk about it at a time. But as far as what type of pad that you want, do you just want a concrete pad out there that's not aesthetically pleasing with the rest of conducive with the landscaping that's already out there? Do you want landscaping that matches the stones, so it's conducive and so it looks as natural? Because if you put just a white concrete pad out there, you're going to ruin the aesthetics of that scene. So those are, you're gonna, what you're gonna do to the looks of the aesthetic.
Stain
of
and
that project.
texture of the concrete.
So there's other items too that you need to, that we can get estimates and look at and ideas that we can bring back and get better costs and illustrations, so you can get a better idea of what it will look like.
what you're saying, make it compatible with what's on the, what's there is very nice. But I also need stained concrete.
You do stained pattern concrete, that would look really good.
On integral color instead of stain or versus stain.
Yeah. Because it's only going to be 4 inches. So
Takes away the maintenance aspect of it.
Sure, that's good. I like your way of thinking. You're a valuable member of the committee.
So what else do you need from this, Chris?
really nothing. Based on, just to make sure I understand the conversation, based on that, kind of lock in the 2 parallel stalls, get out there, get some better measurements for the sidewalk, get a much better total price, including engineering and everything, and bring it back to you guys.
That's fine.
You may be going around it a little more often.
Yeah, an awful lot, but also what's usually parked there are working. They've got their tractors, they've got their, that's what usually parks them. Occasionally, they try and sneak over and park across the street, but that doesn't work very well. But, it's either that and the other is they always park right against this railing on the west side. So you have to go around them to make this turn.
So it seems like contractually, we might be able to drive that change, right? Where they park their vehicle when they're servicing the property.
Have you noticed anything bigger than like a 4-door pickup with a landscape trailer? Can't imagine anything bigger being up there.
Yeah, there's occasionally some of the guys drive up there with towing a trailer that's big enough to drive a very big tractor into it. Plus, but for the most part, it's a pickup truck with about a 16-foot trailer
So
behind
you're
them.
40 foot.
Should I extend that out a little bit, make it another 10 feet longer to pick up a second vehicle that's pitched up or something?
I don't know if I'd want to encourage, I don't think I'd want to
Yeah.
encourage a big truck parking there anyway, because they're going to tear up our
There-
parking
Absolutely
space.
agree with that.
Well, I can
Right.
guarantee you, the guys that work there all the time, and it's quite often, in fact, we were doing it yesterday, they'll park in that spot. Basically, what it's going to be used for is not me going down there to look at something. Workers to find a place to park and get out of the road.
That's the purpose of the
That's the whole
project, is
purpose of
to
that, yeah.
get them off the road so the road is safer for other drivers going down Post Road.
That's exactly right.
Yesterday, they were, if you picture a pretty good sized pickup and a big trailer behind it. he's halfway across the road. You actually have to make a pretty good turn around them to get over. But, they're not there, well, they're actually fairly often, particularly with the workers that are working on our property, the towns. They were cutting the tree down yesterday. And chopping it up. They use up a lot of that space. We're gonna put that in. It has to be wide enough that these guys get off the road, because the norm is they're on the west side, that railing. That's normally where they are. They park along that. Occasionally, they'll park on the east side, right up against the river. And they're into the road by a good 5 feet.
Chris, what you said is that there's an 8 foot by 40 foot that is a place for them to get off the road.
I think I'm gonna bump it up to 9, just based on that if they're wide and they got the big mirrors and stuff, just giving them a little bit more room to reach out of it, especially coming around the curve.
But often, every time that they work on trees or grass and everything, that's where they are. They're sitting right there.
It's kind of a likely place to park.
Kind of the end, that's kind of the end of the flat area, and you pass that head wall, so you got a nice, I mean, it's the natural place to put it. It's,
Isn't where that turn is. There's definitely a drop off. That's pretty steep too. So we're gonna have to, we're gonna pick it up. Because,
It's over $50,000.
15, 15.
So we need to find a guy that does concrete on this.
Typically, it's our practice to get 3 prices on any projects.
my guess is if we do it and guarantee it, that's where they're gonna park.
That's what we want. We want them.
Not the homeowners.
Okay, what else?
anything else, I'll follow up and reach out.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Yep, and definitely if you see something or you want to chat about something else, just let me know.
Okay.
Appreciate your help. You.
So on to our next item. We are on to financial report. See ya. Financial report ending December 2021.
A copy of your budget in your packet, so you have it. And the financial statement ending December. So your revenues to date. Current month expenses. Revenue $36,514. Our revenue, the town amended its budget, but the Community Development Corporation did budget higher than we did last year at almost $180,000 for your revenue. So we don't have to come back and do a budget amendment. We are doing for crime control as we did with the town council because their sales tax was not a realistic budget number. And I'll go over sales tax with you on the next agenda item. So this is just gives you a revenue and expense report. And if you have any questions on that, answer any questions that were right on budget with everything that we have.
Okay.
Yep. Our fund balance is $648,000. I don't have the sales tax, so I was working on that for you guys. Sales tax report. Oh, that, it's not gonna be, it's not on this budget.
Okay.
He asked for, this is a separate.
Okay.
Together.
It's not on this page. She's gonna give us some.
So if you don't have any questions on the finance report, we can go to the next item. So what you're getting is a copy of the history of our sales tax since 2015. And it's just not the board sales tax, it's all of our sales tax. And I track the sales tax different, so people want to know how much sales tax we're getting from the Lantana Town Center. How much are we getting in just in the town? So this is kind of our sales tax. We get a deposit every month that gets split up between the general fund, the community development corporation, and the street fund. The town's sales tax is 2%, the community development corporation is 1/4%, and the street fund is 0.5%. That gets deposited in one fund. The crime controls gets 1/4 cent, that gets deposited directly into their account, so we don't have to do any allocations for that. What this shows you, for example, I'll just go with 2015. This is based on calendar year. The town runs on a fiscal year. But the reason I use this because when we give tax grants, they're based on calendar year. And this isn't even really when you do the audit. So if you compare this to the audit, the numbers wouldn't match because what we collect in the month isn't really, so what we get in January is really October. It's 3 months back. So the collections are really back. So when the auditor comes in, even though we received it in January, they book it back. So when they come in and close all our books, the money gets all moved around. But for our purposes, we're just going to say it's per month. And we're going to, on this example, we're going to do calendar year because we base our tax grants based on calendar year, just to give you an idea of what the sales tax growth has been. So you can see from 2015, the total sales tax collection was $446,000, and in 2021 is $1.2 million. The growth in 6 years.
16.
I don't, and what I'm going to talk and refer to is I'm going to refer to the Lantana Town Center because the
That's what, yeah.
sales tax for individual businesses is confidential information, and I can't share that information with anybody. So what you can see from this report, and we also collect mixed beverages, and mixed beverages comes in as sales tax, and it also comes in as there's a mixed beverage tax and a sales tax. When you go out and get drinks, some restaurants combine it all in one, but sometimes you'll see 2 taxes on there, and that's because one's a mixed beverage tax and one's a sales tax. The sales tax portion of the mixed beverage is confidential. The mixed beverage portion is open information. You can get that information off the comptroller's office, and it's crazy. That's when I tell you that Marty B's is how much money they can do per month. I looked that up, and they report $450,000 in mixed beverage sales in 1 month. And that's public information. It's great. That's how much they're reporting. That's not how much sales tax we're collecting. It's a big difference. But as you can see, for like in 2021, the Lantana Town Center, it's also what the state comptroller comes, we call it a combined area, is about half of our sales tax, a little less than a little bit, $500,000 of our sales tax for last calendar year. So the town collected, if you look at it, column 2021, the total sales tax that Bartonville collected was 1.2 million. Of that, 552,000 was collected from the Lantana Town Center businesses collectively. So, but all of that, the 552,000 is part of that 1.2 million
Correct.
collected.
Yeah.
The mixed beverage sales tax, you can see that's gone up. That is contributed to Marty B's and the Bartonville store. The mixed beverages that we collect in the Lantana Town Center is very minimal. The only, and we have Casamia, Tokyo Samurai, Marty B's, and Bartonville store. We're getting ready to get the barrel. I mean, they finally just submitted their finish out permit, but that may go up. But you can really see the Marty B's is really contributing a lot to that mixed beverage sales tax. So if you look back at one column at 2021, I'll try to explain. So of the 1.6 million in 2021 of the sales tax collected, you add in the mixed beverage sales tax of all of the money collected and the property tax, and this is based from the Lantana Town Center, all the funds. Sorry, not of the 1.2 million, of the $505,000 collected from the Lantana Town Center. The net benefit to the town is $438,000.
Just
That's just out of the 1.2 million, the 505,000 from the Lantana Town Center. We only paid out to the developer $111,000. And that's paying 50% on one side, 75% on the other, and reimbursing property tax. And it differs, like you'll see the year before, why was it 235,000? It depends on, the agreement that we have says that we only base our tax grants based on the amount that we collected. So a lot of businesses, Kroger, they don't pay their property taxes in December, they'll pay them in January. So I haven't finished calculating for calendar year 2021, but for the businesses that owed 2021 taxes, if they paid them in 2022, we don't calculate that. But there were in 2019 that paid in 2020. So when we do the calculations, we have to, everybody that paid 2019 property taxes in 2020 and property taxes paid in 2020. So you take both those years, combine them, then we calculate tax grants based off of that.
That's based on property.
That's property tax, which is included in the grant paid to the developer. They get 100% of the property
Of
tax,
property
a
tax.
grant based on 100% of
The
the
Lantana
property
Town
tax.
Center gets
Newquest gets it.
Newquest, yeah,
Yes.
but that doesn't apply to Bartonville.
No, only the
Only
combined
that-
area, only the combined area. And-
I'm just looking at the total amount of sales tax. Bartonville, look at that. It's staggering.
So it continues to increase. And so then at the bottom, I just added what crime control collects every year. Because they're not included in that total base because they're a separate fund and a separate account, and I don't have to break out their funds.
Yeah, this is based on just the.
That's the
Lantana.
1/4%. Now, the crime control tax is a 1/4% and nothing. We don't collect any crime control tax in the Lantana Town Center, 0. So it's everywhere in the town of Bartonville, except for Lantana Town Center. And this also includes your sales taxes. They're things people order online. So Amazon, my confidential sales tax report is pages long. I don't print it out, but it's, the spreadsheet is massive.
Just to my house. it's-
Anything that people order online, that sales tax is paid, and just, I have to have their sales tax ID numbers to pull the businesses out of Lantana Town Center to know how to do those calculations. But then it's like, where are all these other businesses? Where are these people coming from? And, we're tracking who's paying, who hasn't paid, when they're reporting, when they're not reporting. So we're track of all of that to make sure we're getting our money.
There was this rumor too at one point that people were saying if you didn't use Bartonville as your address, so like a lot of times you order something and the default town is Argyle because of the zip code. Is that true?
And that's what the company Zac Tax that we just got a contract with, they help us organize and look at all that. And so it's based off of areas. And the comptroller is their software is getting more sophisticated now too, that it's the purchasing and it's all in the areas and not based off of, because it's Argyle 760, it's going to the town of Argyle, because Lantana is 76226, we're
I
76226.
see.
So it's not
you're-
based on zip code, it's based
Okay.
on areas.
I just want to make sure we're
So
not
they
losing
have
out.
mapping, no, they have mapping areas and they have ID numbers and control numbers and it's based where they are. So we have to make sure that like all of our businesses and where they order are within our areas. And that's what the company Exact Tax helps us do, is make sure that we are getting the funds reported to us. Yep.
So effectively now, if I understand this, is Antenna Town Center is roughly half of the total sales tax. that we collect.
It's less than half, but
Yeah,
it's,
which is substantial, but what that says is starting to make a lot outside of the town center, which used to be basically that was most of the taxes. But now we're getting parties and other people who are.
well, if you like in 2015, our sales tax was 446 and the town center sales tax was 79. So, I mean, you're looking at the very first, the top line, and then you're looking at the
Yeah.
fourth line. So pretty much starting in 2017, they started contributing about half of what our sales tax about started doubling. Well, you can probably look at probably 2018 is when it was open. You can see when our mixed
That's what I-
beverage,
Yeah.
yeah, 2018 is when our mixed beverage went
Yeah.
sky high. And then when we do the calculations to the developer, we keep the first $50,000 generated in sales tax. It's part of our agreement. So it's poorly written and we define it differently and we went back and forth at it. And I won that fight.
Thanks to Tammy.
I
for
won that fight, so.
That's right.
It's poorly written, but as bad as it's written, we're still not doing that bad, so.
So Tammy, we have, last time I looked, 490 houses or something like that. in Bartonville.
Our new census is coming out, so I'll have that
But
information.
it's
We
about,
have
let's
more-
say.
we have a little over 500, I believe.
Over 500 houses, but with $1.2 million in sales tax, we had to make that up with property taxes. That would be a couple $1,000s for every house. The other part of that is sales tax. It's probably like 85–90% paid by.
It's not Bartonville, it's outside.
It's outside, it. So basically sales tax is all purchased through that to the city. So it's a huge. thing. Well, no.
Not our population, it's our house,
it's
our housing.
By housing.
They're
That's-
just,
It's right around 500.
500.
we're getting the final numbers off, based off the permits in the new residential homes, so I'll have those numbers here soon. COG does a new estimate, so they're coming out with those numbers based on our building permits, and we're finalizing all that information.
But also take into account the 3 new subdivisions. coming.
No, that property,
that's
that's
all.
not
That's all.
included that we won't collect any property tax on those homes until those homes are built and closed. That'll be 80.
There's another 80 houses.
Anyhow, that's kind of our sales tax
Thank you,
is
Tony.
good and strong. So it's,
Tammy, that-
when they first estimated that, they said we weren't going to be making, the town wouldn't be getting anything from that side. And we've
famous
torn that
estimate-
thing, we've tore that thing apart.
Famous
So
estimate was that there would only be a $40,000 ever.
so
So anything else to add there? Any other questions? Awesome. Good news. Next is discussion on marketing promotional items and advertising of local businesses.
I don't have anything new to report. I
Nothing new
just
to
have that on
report?
there as a standing item in case there's anything new to report.
Okay.
Nobody, they're not doing anything besides the liquor store, up that piece of property where they put the car wash in.
There's no car wash.
Oh, yeah, I know.
We'll be back on Old Town, well, I guess on marketing or advertising local businesses. They took the sign down and then they have finally submitted for a definition. So we'll see what happens with that, but it was not staff assisted.
I mean, what they are moving on the dirt, what theoretically goes in.
The dirt that's been moving, they have had to stop moving all of that dirt because they were building a shell building. And since Dutch Brothers and doing a review of our ordinances last year, because I was so focused on the economic development part, there's our part of our PD ordinance, which we're working on trying to get cleaned up, says that anything before they can build any building, they have to have a site plan approval. And so when Dutch Brothers, when we found that, and Dutch Brothers was coming in, it's like, well, you have to come and get a site plan approval. Well, we didn't do that with all the other places. It's like, too bad. We just because we didn't do it before, you need to do it now. Because we found this, you have to do this. It's part of the ordinance.
that
So
was
that's
supposed
why
to-
Dutch Brothers put one in and Brakes Plus put one in. And so there, somebody called the other day for an inspection and we're like, for what? And they said the address. And we called and I said, you need to tell them the Dutch Brothers address is this, not this. And they're like, no, Newquest is building a shell building. And we're like, no site plan approval. And so everything's kind of been put on a stop and now they are getting everything together and submitting all the documentation for their building.
Theoretically, it's gonna be Brakes Plus. and-
No, I mean,
Dutch
this
Brothers.
Brakes Plus has already been approved and the Dutch Brothers is approved.
Oh,
But they were just building a shell building, like where Shellman's
oh,
and
yeah.
Casamia and all that, they were just putting a building in.
Spec building.
Your wallet or that.
How would the tenant in mind just? a
So,
spec
yeah,
building?
they said, well, they don't have any tenants. And it's like, you're building a building. You have to get a site plan approval for it. So then they wanted to argue that they got a site plan approval when the plat was approved, but it's more than 2 years old. And the site plan expires after 2 years if you haven't done anything with it. And it's not anything compared to what they're actually building today. So their engineer went, yeah, you're right. Okay, we'll get the information submitted to you. So
Hardy, theoretically, would we have this coffee shop available?
it's coming along. We'll see when he has it
Yeah,
open.
yeah.
And then he got approval, where his replat and everything, his site plan amendment for Marty B's, he's adding on a smoker in the back. So they're doing an addition in the back. Or he's putting a larger smoker in, and then his sign, like when you come in off
That's real-
IT Neely,
That's pretty, that's
yeah,
really.
he added,
that's
that got
really
approved
well.
in his site plan amendment.
That's really well done. That's-
And then Kim Cloud, they had their DRC for Kim Cloud, and that's gonna be 17,000 square feet, I think, for Kim. I think it's first they wanted, I think it was 2.5 stories. And there was some conflict in the definitions of our code, but they're getting ready to move forward with that as well. So
So it's quite a bit larger.
I think, so. I think that's what Corey told me. Don't quote me on that, but it's pretty big. So
I was thinking 10 or something like that.
So I could be wrong. So that's coming in and we had another application for discussion for a 14 lot, 5 acre subdivision.
14 lots.
14 lot, 5 acres
Super,
subdivision.
Super.
No.
She got turned down.
So she did not get turned down. They didn't submit a formal approval.
I guess whose property it is, is it Seals?
It could be very close to yours. Yes.
Somebody said they were trying to go to 4 acres, is it 5 acre?
5 acres is what they're presenting.
The back of Jim and Kathy's property is
5 acres.
the front part is 2 acres. I think
Yes.
The back part is 5.
So there's a potential another subdivision that went through informal DRC, which will go to DRC at the end of the month. So we've got that coming in, that Cloud9's been on that, the other subdivision. So we'll potentially have 4 subdivisions going in this year. So 90, 80, 94 homes. So that's it.
Anything new on any Whataburger or anything?
No, they haven't submitted anything.
When I went to go down there, the wait time was It's so small, it needs to be at least double the size. Jesus.
It's like the Chick-fil-A by my house. It's insane, insane.
Every Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
They closed it down and put double lanes in, and I'm like, it's 9 o'clock at night. What the heck? Yeah, doesn't matter what time of day.
Property right behind. 10 acres.
Oh, the 10 acre. We have, I know the people that own the property next to it came in inquiring. Seeing that, so you have the 8 acre subdivision, trifecta estates.
Yep.
And then there's property which belongs to the Whackers. And then you have the corner lot. So the Whackers fenced off their property and put their cattle in one section of it for their livestock. They're getting ready to build a home and indicated that they were wanting to buy the property on the corner and to rezone it. It's like, they just wanted to do nothing with it. And we said, well, if you don't want to do anything with it, you don't need to rezone it. You can just stay like it is. You don't plan on building anything. I don't know if that's what's going to happen or not, but we've had people come in from restaurants to nursing facilities to every week it's something different that somebody wants to build there. And then we've been getting calls about the property behind 7-Eleven. So there's a lot of interest. So we're,
It's gonna be a tough place to build it. So,
we thought behind Marty B's would be a tough place to build a subdivision as well. So
hey, sure is.
never say never.
You could just walk over to Marty's. Have some drinks. You don't even have to drive.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's pretty busy. We get phone calls every day. We had somebody come in today and said, where do you got land? I want to build something. And it's like, well, what do you want to build? Well, subdivision, how many, what size of lots? They were like minimum 2 acres. And they're like, well, that won't work for me. It's like, okay, bye. Well, where can I go? It's not my job to tell you where you can go buy property. I'm sorry. It's really, I can't help you with that one.
There's this thing called the internet.
So yeah, it's like, we can't really, and they're like, well, that doesn't do any good. We're like, sorry, 2 acres. Well, we could, and again, we don't know where properties are for sale, so we don't track that.
Nobody's looking at, or considering the property Shellman's found the, like the red line.
Well, they have prospects, but they don't share that information with us. And there was HTO that was supposed to be, so on Blanco Drive, on the other side of Blanco Drive, on their plans, they have that divided into 2 pieces of property.
If I remember right.
And they had HTO that was proposing to come in, and they withdrew the night that we had them scheduled for a DRC. They called and canceled because they had not gotten approval from the headquarters. So that didn't mean that they were withdrawing. Well, they hadn't actually formally submitted, but they had not gotten formal approval from their headquarters, so they weren't moving. Chick-fil-A. I still want Chick-fil-A. But anyhow, so they canceled their DRC meeting the night of it. I'm still good to work for it. But
Go for the Chick-fil-A.
I know. I wish. I keep dreaming.
Whataburger would be good.
There was talk, but we don't have a formal submittal yet. So
That's not.
Yeah. I have 5 kids looking at school, they'd be walking down there.
Yes, they would. Yes, they would.
So any future agenda items to,
Just the lighting for Bartonville store.
uh-huh.
We're not gonna do another traffic study until October.
be next October.
Last time we did the
Yet,
survey that had all the how many people were going into Kroger and how many people were going into Bartonville.
Oh, the cell phone analysis.
Oh, that's what it was,
Yeah,
the
that was
cell
a cell phone analysis.
How did they do that or did we do
We did that with Retail Coach.
It's been.
I can look that
it's
up.
Probably been almost 2 years. That might be worth looking at again to see, because it was surprising.
I can give him a call and see what he recommends for an update and find out. We can renew, so it's like we're budgeted to get to continue to contract with them. But Aaron,
Traffic count.
yeah, it's like,
Traffic count has got to be working from home a couple days a week. I just see cars going like this past my house.
Boy, gee,
Where are
there's
all these
definitely
cars
way
coming
up.
from?
Yeah, I can't even.
Yeah, it's pretty tough.
I'll be in October.
All right.
Okay, so the retail coach was where we got all. the
Yeah,
cell
Aaron
phone
with
stuff.
the cell phone
Cell
analysis
phone
and those
analysis.
numbers.
That was really nice.
I can ask him if he can do an update and if you had any update on the Western store.
Uh,
All right, so I am going to call the meeting adjourned for Bartonville Community Development Corporation meeting, January 12th.
Amy, great job as usual.
You guys did the meeting. That
Progress.
Sounds good.
You good? All right, we're gonna build it. They will come.
Is that
They will
something-
come sit on that bench. and we'll look at those horses at night.
Maybe you can give Dell the good news, I guess.
There's no news
There's
to give
nothing
yet.
done.
We're
There's
good.
nothing to approve. There's nothing.
Yeah, we're not.
You're
we're
not even-
we're not